Welcome to today's webinar, Connecting Resources to Community-Based Planning, hosted by the Maryland Department of Planning in association with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Brownfields and Land Revitalization Program and Office of Community Revitalization and the Smart Growth Network. My name is Michael Meyer. I'm the Manager of Infrastructure and Development at the Maryland Department of Planning and Project Manager for the Smart Growth Information Clearinghouse. The Smart Growth Information Clearinghouse is a project of the Smart Growth Network, supported by the US EPA's Office of Community Revitalization and managed by the Maryland Department of Planning. In addition to hosting webinars, the Smart Growth Information Clearinghouse has a website at smartgrowth.org that provides information on effective growth, development, and preservation practices. The website provides information about events, funding opportunities, awards, and resources to help local decision makers foster healthy, resilient, and economically vibrant communities. The Clearinghouse is the virtual home of the Smart Growth Network, a nationally recognized coalition of leadership organizations that have formally endorsed the principles of smart growth. This webinar is one in a series of webinars produced by the Maryland Department of Planning on smart growth and planning topics, available for viewing at smartgrowth.org. This webinar is also the third in a series sponsored by the US EPA's Brownfields and Land Revitalization and Office of Community Revitalization, called Learning from and Leaning on Local Leaders to Revitalize African American Neighborhoods. Thank you for participating today, and we encourage you to attend the other webinars in the series. The views expressed by the speakers in this webinar are those of the speakers and not necessarily of the Maryland Department of Planning or the state of Maryland. We are recording this webinar and will be posting it on our website under the Webinar Archives tab. We encourage you to visit the website and to subscribe to our e-newsletter to learn about our upcoming programs. You can also find out about planning initiatives, planning tools, and educational opportunities in Maryland by visiting the Maryland Department of Planning's website at planning.maryland.gov. Viewers of this live event are eligible to receive 1.5 CM credits from the American Planning Association and 1.5 CNUA CEU self-reported credits from the Congress for the New Urbanism. To log your AICP credits, visit the American Planning Association's website at planning.org, log into your account, and search for the name of today's event, which is Connecting Resources to Community-Based Planning. You can also search for event number 922-2605. Our panelists today are Christopher Harrell, Jim Vanderkloot, Stephen Meyer, and Brothel Britt. Chris Harrell is the founder and principal of the Lazarus Group, LLC, a firm engaged in crafting redevelopment strategies for distressed properties, corridors, and communities. From 2004 until 2011, he managed distressed property redevelopment efforts as Brownfield Redevelopment Coordinator for the City of Indianapolis's Department of Metropolitan Development. Chris currently assists in the Brownfields Area Benefits Estimator project with the University of Louisville's Center for Environmental Policy and Management. He also works part-time for the local Initiative Support Corporation and teaches sustainability courses at the Paul H. O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs. Jim Vanderkloot is the Land Revitalization Coordinator for US EPA's Region 5 office in Chicago. His work has focused on brownfields and sustainable development practices, including overseeing Region 5's work on the HUD EPA DOT Partnership for Sustainable Communities. And Jim has been the host of other webinars in this series. Stephen Meyer is the Chief Executive Officer of Renew Indianapolis Incorporated, a nonprofit supporting comprehensive community development initiatives throughout greater Indianapolis. Stephen has successfully launched 2 community development financial institutions and managed the merger of 2 vertically integrated nonprofit organizations. Since 2014, he has overseen a team that has secured grants totaling more than $30 million for affordable housing and economic development. Finally, Brothel Britt is the president and CEO of the Edna Martin Christian Center, or EMCC, a community-based organization serving the Martindale Brightwood and surrounding communities in Near East Indianapolis. Brothel previously served as the center's deputy director and then executive director of leadership and the Legacy Campus, the EMCC's intergenerational hub for activities related to youth and senior empowerment. In that role, he is responsible for day-to-day management, operations and logistics, and staff and program development. Following their presentations, our panelists will answer as many questions as time permits. You can submit a question anytime by using the questions tool located the control panel on the right side of your screen. And today, our session is going to be introduced by Janet McCabe, who was sworn in as the 16th Deputy Administrator of the US EPA in April. Over the course of her career, Janet McCabe has worked for state environmental agencies in Massachusetts and her longtime adopted home state of Indiana. Prior to joining EPA in 2009, she was Executive Director of Improving Kids Environment Incorporated, a children's environmental health advocacy organization based in Indianapolis, the city that is the subject of our webinar today. And with that, we will share her recorded remarks. Thank you, Janet. As we usually do, we're going to start today with a quick poll of the audience just to see where everybody is visiting from. so that you can see that yourselves, and also the panelists get a sense of where everybody is from today. So if you're having any trouble responding to this poll, you may need to exit from full screen mode, and we'll give everybody a few seconds to respond, and then we'll start our discussion today. And thanks again for participating, especially those who've been in other sessions of this series. I'll give you maybe another 20 or so seconds to respond. And thanks to everybody who is. We're seeing the tabulations come in. Another second or two here. Okay, so today 30% of our audience is in the South, kind of self-defined, 27% Mid-Atlantic Northeast, 26% in the Midwest, 12% in the West, and 6% international. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris Harrell to start our conversation. Welcome, Chris.
I'm coming at you only about 2 blocks west of where Janet McCabe just spoke to us. And so I've had a great opportunity to get to know these neighborhoods that are very close to our homes. From 2004 to 2011, I was the Brownfield Redevelopment Coordinator for the City of Indianapolis. And I want to take you through a little walk in time back through the neighborhoods. It's 2 neighborhoods adjacent to each other that they have joined together to create impact.
Chris, so, we need you to share your screen so we can see your slides. Thank you.
All right. So now we'll start here in our walk back through history in Martindale Brightwood, going back about 10 years, a little more. What I want to discuss is the power of collaboration. Just can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to confirm. So setting the stage, we're going to look at a legacy of disinvestment in both the Martindale and Brightwood neighborhoods. 1872 and 1874, they were founded and comprised mostly of working class community, comprised mostly of African Americans and first generation European Americans, laborers working in factories at the dawn of industrialization in the center of Indianapolis. The departure of railroads, along with urban renewal policies, interstates, and the expansion ushered in disinvestment post-World War II. But prior to that, you can see here the location almost dead center in the center of Indianapolis, just a little bit east of the Meridian Street, which is the north-south divider in the middle of the city. The next map is going to give a little idea of Indianapolis 2006 to 10. The brownfield inventory is showing brownfield sites, sites of concern, redevelopment ready sites, and those that have been redeveloped in blue. What you may note in the center of the screen, just in Center Township, noting a theme, is a high concentration of brownfield sites. And guess where those might be? Martindale Brightwood revealed itself after thorough investigation to be the epicenter of brownfield sites and legacy issues therewith. And we conducted a survey, and this is the Martindale neighborhood, and also goes into Brightwood to the east. And this was a focused study to identify brownfield sites and sites of interest right along the Modine corridor, going down the center of the site. And a little bit more background, this is the actual Martindale and Brightwood neighborhoods complete and their brownfield inventory investigation. You will also note the epic and story of disinvestment ushered in after the 40s and after shift in patterns, where we have vacant abandoned housing, residential land use, and vacant land identified. This is a graphic that we utilized in the 2008 AIA SDAT application to try to tell the story of what's going on and the epic disinvestment that has occurred, affecting the lives of many. Here's a seminal point in history. This is the largest and most contaminated brownfield in the neighborhood areas so far discovered and addressed. But this is the Dr. Martin Luther King Day rally that Reverend Wilkins and many in the Martindale Brightwood Environmental Justice Collaborative attended in January 2006 on MLK Jr. Day. So just wanted to point out, this was in response to the conditions witnessed, and I think concern had boiled over at this point with what had been left in legacy conditions. Obvious known contamination at this site, because so many of the neighborhood residents had worked in the site and had witnessed the activities of the management and what had gone on for years before it was abandoned and left fallow in the neighborhood, right across the street from a church, as you can tell. So the Martindale Brightwood Environmental Justice Collaborative, working together throughout the neighborhood, made its situation known. The city then stepped in, worked to create a funding pool to complete the demolition and environmental cleanup with 6 different grants in partnership from the Indiana Finance Authority Brownfield program. So here we see some action just a little bit over a year from that march, and a pretty dramatic picture. I enjoyed putting this together. It took me on a walk down through history. I just want to put the setting a little bit further on the conditions witnessed in the aughts in 2000 in Martindale Brightwood neighborhood. This is particularly in Martindale. Community condition, abandoned junkyard, action based on collaborative effort. This was identified and prioritized and taken on. Again, community condition, another junkyard, and you can actually see what kind of activities were going on. The 2 gentlemen there were burning wires and taking the insulation off, scrapping metal on the site that had been delinquent on taxes for at least 10 years. And in this condition, we were able to take action with community effort, even organizing a community cleanup day, removing a bunch of abandoned tires on the site at one point. I'm going to note there's a red dump truck there. We'll see it again in the future. Community condition, another site right along that Monon corridor, the Greenway, something everybody enjoys in Indianapolis and tends to recognize now as a huge asset. It did have some issues, some abandoned automobiles, and it was really a chop shop that was operating there for close to 30 years. And working with CSX, we were able to get this site cleaned up. Community action. And so I'm trying to paint the picture to understand the extreme conditions witnessed in the Martindale and Brightwood neighborhood, but I also want to hesitate and say not all the neighborhood is like this. So I just want to say these are the brownfield specific conditions witnessed that needed to be addressed, and that the neighborhood stepped up and helped with the help of the faith-based organizations, Martindale Brightwood Environmental Justice Collaborative, and many, many more. There's 2 CDCs, King Park Area Development Corp and Martindale Brightwood CDC. Amazing work. And then new nonprofits came in. This is Falegi Hiwat Center, Youth Urban Farming Center. This is just a hint. This is not the site that was just cleaned up, but they are the organization that took on that site and received it after the CARE grant efforts identified it as a priority and got a TBA grant from EPA to help clean it up. It was really great stuff. So meeting adversity and challenges, we have many organizations that have been doing so for years, long before the early 2000s. Many Edna Martin Christian Center, where we just will be speaking here in a bit. Oasis of Hope, Scott United Methodist Church with Reverend Wilkins, that's where he was the pastor, many more, plus many CDCs and community-based organizations grew and to help meet the challenges with their partners above. And Martindale Brightwood CDC and King Park Area CDC both doing so. The Martindale Brightwood Environmental Justice Collaborative was resident-based organization that grew out of Scott United Methodist Church and attendees, but went across many faith-based organizations and throughout the neighborhood to take action. Reverend Williams, Elizabeth Gore, Miss Pemberton, I'll speak of later, and Improving Kids' Environment stepped in to work with the MBEJC to help get that EPA CARE grant and leverage it in the community. Feliga Hiwat Center, youth urban farming, and working with soil conditions in the neighborhood. This is a little flyer. I found this is a little legacy from the past. This is one of just the evidence of some of the action that was going on at the time. I figure I had to show this and bring the awareness that was coming through. All right, so how can city, state, and federal officials better help community-based efforts? With the Smart Growth District, the topic of what we're trying to share in collaborative efforts, we started, how can we do this? Well, first is starting with research and evidence-based practice and helping lean on that to guide efforts and creativity. So when you link that to brownfields, did a little research back in the day, and we found that Peter Meyer had written, in order to affect greater change in brownfield redevelopment, research demonstrates it's best to concentrate efforts in a specific area. How do you decide what that area is? How do you decide how big it is? That is up to the collaborative effort. These things were discussed in a great deal when putting together the ideas and issues of smart growth and how we address problems in the neighborhoods. So tying a smart growth redevelopment district concept of the issues, the tenets of smart growth, and looking forward and how we can make a more sustainable redevelopment as it occurs requires collaboration to achieve the proper partnership. A photograph here demonstrates, I found this one in the records. This was the first meeting with the Green Commission's Brownfields Committee. And it was to discuss some ideas that we'd already just bounced off of Martindale Brightwood Community Development Corporation's Executive Committee, King Park Area Development Corp's Executive Committee, and others, and we wanted to take it to the Green Commission to get their input, collaboration, and advice. Next one to also focus, it was based in a recommendation already crafted and submitted by the city in its green print as recommendation number 24, to identify specific priority urban areas where existing planning and community assets overlap, creating opportunities for higher density, mixed use, and connected development. So it is tying together different pieces and then collaborating on how to move forward. Wanted to just point that out and the key points. And how do you leverage more help? And this is a key part too. We worked with Brad Bobian, later to become the director of planning and also the director of metropolitan development at the city. But back in the day, we were just lower guys. And he took on a big challenge, and he recognized the key of implementing the Smart Growth Redevelopment District to help out with the many issues and layers in that area was going to need some further understanding, review, and better collaboration and partnerships. So what he did is he drafted an AIA, Sustainable Design Assistance Team application in 2008, and in it formalize some community partnerships and support to get that grant effort. Is really assistant effort where they bring in experts from around the country to help work and create plans with the community, not telling them what to do, working with them to prioritize and determine what can be done. And next step, it occurred, success. And we're able to, in October 2009, had the SDAT community workshop, massively attended, great input, and actually people were fired up, and it was wonderful. And the best part about it was we had some attendance at the fired up last final community meeting of some EPA headquarters representatives. They got to hear the ire and the concern and the demand for change, and it was great. The report recommended bold action. That action been listened to, and it further honed a shared vision to move forward. And then finally, what was that vision contained in those reports? Just a quick, very surface review was identifying nodes and priority areas that could be addressed soon, and demonstrating to the community what these changes may physically look like when achieved. Furthermore, and this is a little side note, but definitely not an aside, in 2009, about the same time as when Improving Kids Environment stepped in and with their partner organizations and working with the CARE grant. So, and with the outcomes of that were also fantastic. I want to then share as things dovetailed. So this effort, bringing these partnerships and collaboration forward to achieve goals identified both in the Smart Growth Redevelopment District Plan, which changed to the Smart Growth District Indianapolis based on community input, occurred at the SDAT meetings. That new name, it was then leveraged with partners from the Sustainable Communities Partnership, created also in 2009. And in 2010, the Smart Growth District Indianapolis was designated as a sustainable communities pilot, 1 of 5 in the country. Last but not least, I would give a quick shout out to Reverend Wilkins and Augustine Pemberton, and she represents many of the Black women who work so hard in the neighborhood. And I've only put a few there, but I just want to say they have made such a huge impact and difference. You know, they're advocates and also very strong community advocates doing great work. And from there, I'll hand it on over to Jim.
Thank you. So I've got a little 5-minute story of how federal resources engaged within the rich context of all this community effort and community leadership and good ideas that were generated. Federal resources played a critical role in helping local leadership to move this project from vision into the implementation phase during the 2010-2011 time period. As many of you on the line will know, too many planning projects grind to a halt at this point. Visions created, communities behind it, what happens next? And it was at this point that Chris Harrell from Indianapolis, and City of Indianapolis, and Jean Betsy, the King Park CDC, approached US EPA and asked for help in this next phase. And this is right when the HUD DOT EPA Partnership for Sustainable Communities had just been kicked off. It was a wonderful concept, but there wasn't funding yet. But we were able to start working in this district with Brownfields land revitalization funding. And the project grew from this initial seed into a two-year effort, which turned out to be a very excellent investment. Brownfields program funded 5 projects across the country as HUD DOT EPA partnership pilots. And I will say our next webinar in 3 weeks is the Fairmont Corridor in Boston, which is another one of these 5 pilots. So EPA brought in our consulting team, ICF Vita Nova, and they worked off of initial scope, which was first digesting all these community efforts and planning efforts that had gone on in the past, including the CARE grant, and addressing a common theme, which is communities think that planning processes happen and nobody does anything. And we wanted to make sure that past community input was recognized and incorporated. Also working with community leadership, we collectively set up a steering committee which met regularly. And so there was feedback to all these organizations which reached out in turn to their constituents, built directly on the work of the SDAT planning process that Chris Harrell had described. The community wanted the following things in general: increased density to support community amenities, walkable neighborhoods with transportation options, retail and other services, removal of blight, infill housing, single family and multifamily, and jobs in the community. To make a long story short, what we were able to put together was an action plan that took the vision down to a more granular level and identified specific projects and strategies to be put into action in the short term. And the vision was test, clean up, and reuse brownfield sites concentrated along a major bike trail. This is the Monon Bike Trail along here. And just all these red properties are brownfields. Housing, renovate and replace with infill, particularly along transportation corridors to support retail and other services, and concentrate development and density at a southern node here, the 16th Street and the Monon Trail. So the next step, once this focus and roll up your sleeve practicality was established, the next thing we did was a funding charrette. And I will say this is a big lesson out of this particular project is all of our partners and our consultants put together a funding charrette, brought all of the funders we could think of, Fed, state, city departments, transportation agencies, foundations, together with community representatives, local leadership, and nonprofits, and brainstormed collectively about how these projects could be funded. Tables were divided up by issue. All the transportation people sat together, all the housing people sat at another table. And what was set forth was a community funding strategy. And the timing in terms of short, medium, and long-term priorities and prioritization in terms of what are the most important things to address first. And I would say one example of a high priority short-term thing that makes a big visible difference for community is something a city can do. Curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. A common complaint in an underserved neighborhood is look at the neighboring neighborhoods. It looks nice, and look at our neighborhood. City chipped in and did this work early. So I will say at the end of this phase, Indianapolis Foundation, which had been at the table, loved this whole prioritization of resources and structure. And so they funded a half-time position for 2 years at the King Park CDC to start working on getting this funding. And as a result, in 2 years, $4 million in resources were brought in. And this got the ball rolling on a whole range of projects. In addition, funding came in from HUD through the HUD partnership for a TOD rezoning of this neighborhood transit-oriented development. And the city applied for a brownfield assessment grant focused on this specific district. And it's right at this time, Stephen Meyer came into the picture as Indy's new brownfields coordinator. And so I will switch slides now to his slides. I'm changing slides for him, so. All right, Stephen.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for driving the slideshow for me. We'll make this work. So my name is Stephen Meyer. I'm the CEO of Renew Indianapolis, which is the successor organization for King Park Development Corporation that you've heard about today. And as Jim said, I was also the successor for Chris at the Brownfields program and at the city, and built off of a lot of what Chris started at the city, and then worked with King Park and Martindale Brightwood very closely at my time there. And when the position running King Park became available, it was a natural fit for me to move into that position and start implementing some of the plans that have been developed. I think Jim mentioned that there were about 50 plans in this area that had been done over the years and were ready to be implemented. So, Jim, I can't see the slide, so if you want to advance to the second slide, I can talk a little bit more about Renew. Renew is a comprehensive community development organization that really focuses on 4 main lines of business. We run the city's land bank. We have a housing development program that focuses on single-family home ownership opportunities. We do also own some rental properties, but we don't develop new rental properties. And then we also are engaged in a significant amount of lending. We do small business lending, very similar to SBA loans. And then we have another arm that does affordable housing lending, both single family mortgage products, and we have a multifamily loan product as well. So we enter community development mostly through the real estate and financing aspects of community development, and then have a lot of partnerships that build on all of the other components of community development. So Jim, if you want to advance to the third slide. So our lending is done through community development financial institution subsidiaries. So we Build Fund focuses on business lending, and Edge Fund is the entity that handles all of our affordable housing lending. They are CDFIs are essentially mission-driven banks that have much greater flexibility. They're certified by U.S. Department of Treasury, and are really designed to help facilitate the community projects that are often envisioned during the community planning process. So, moving from the city to King Park and starting to really focus on implementation, whenever you're going into an area like the Smart Growth District, where there are a lot of environmental issues to deal with, a lot of vacant and abandoned properties, I always recommend people start small, and really that helps you understand the environmental issues that are going on, up gradient and down gradient sites, how they affect each other. There are legal issues, especially around liability. There are political issues that need to be navigated, and also, there are issues around real estate and understanding the market. I always recommend that you start small so that you can build on successes. You can always take on more complicated sites, bigger sites, and you can also build market demand, which makes completing these projects a little bit easier. So, Jim, if you want to go to the fourth slide, I will start talking about how I didn't follow any of my own advice. And we started in the Smart Growth District with a project called Tinker Flats. So Tinker Flats is the 100-year-old former manufacturing facility. It had been abandoned, vacant at least, for about 20 or 25 years. Originally, it was a bank furniture manufacturing facility. Then it became a rag recycling company before it became a lead battery recycling facility, and then was abandoned. It was right at the corner of 16th and the Monon, so a prominent intersection, a very visible building, and had been looked at many times for a redevelopment opportunity. Jim, if you want to advance to the fifth slide. So we acquired the property and started the renovation process, which we removed all the windows, the old wood windows. There was an outbuilding we demolished, and we were really hoping to stabilize the building, tuck point, put a new roof on it, new windows. And if you advance to the sixth slide, this is when we pulled out the interior foundation and we got our first surprise. We knew that there was TCE, PCE in the groundwater in this area, and some soil contamination as well. There were up gradient and down gradient sources that we were concerned about as well. But the biggest surprise was when we pulled out the foundation, we found out that at some point it had been filled, the interior had been filled with lead impacted soil. And so the building itself was very unstable at that point because all the windows had been removed. And so we had to treat the lead inside the building in situ and then remove it. And we removed about 500 cubic yards. In some places, we went down 4 feet inside the building in order to remove it all. If you want to advance to the 7th slide. After that was all completed, we were able to replace all the windows, finish the stabilization part of the project, and get it ready for the long-term tenants. And this is also where our CDFIs came into play. There still wasn't closure. There was an open RCRA corrective action on the site, so it wasn't a bankable asset. And we had 2 tenants that we knew about. A distillery wanted a production facility there, and then an event space. So we ended up making a loan to the then owner of the building to bridge between taking possession of the building and whenever they were able to secure closure on the environmental issues. And then we made a loan to one of the tenants as well to buy equipment. This was a very complicated stack of money. We had a bank partner who put money in. We had the city put some revolving loan fund money into the project. And then the state actually put some money in through us. They weren't able to loan money directly to a for-profit, so they loaned money to us, which we then loaned to the tenant. So we were able to finally put together all the money that was necessary to get this site up and running. So it finally did get closure on all of its issues, I think in 2019, so it took quite a while. But that was really the first project that we took on in the Smart Growth District of significance. So if you advance to slide 9, we were also looking at our other activities, specifically around housing. And we had been working in the areas on the western edge of the King Park service area. And those neighborhoods were mostly stabilized, and all of the market activity was moving east towards Martindale Brightwood. And so we decided to focus on that area, those neighborhoods around the intersection of 16th and the Monon. If you want to go to slide 11. So the interesting thing about that particular area was 2 neighborhoods that straddled the Monon Trail. On the east side, it was Martindale Brightwood. On the west side, it was Kennedy King. That also is historically where the red line maps bisected the neighborhoods as well. And so we actually ran into some very prominent ways in which redlining affected how we developed in different parts of this this one relatively small area. So the city at the time started this project called LIFT, which was a multi-year commitment of federal grant funds to a very concentrated area, mostly home and CDBG funds, over a 3-year period, about $3.5 million in commitments. And so we put together a project, and if you go to slide 11, which we called Monon 16. And Monon 16, we had a different name for it because it was 2 different neighborhoods. It wasn't just one. And we brought in 8 different partners to partner with us on this proposal, and we were selected as the inaugural lift area. It included housing, economic development. We had some amenity enhancements, some infrastructure improvements. We had rental housing as part of it as well. And so we really started though with the community. So if you want to go to slide 12, the feedback we got from the community was, they wanted a mixed income neighborhood. It was an overwhelmingly low income neighborhood. They wanted market rate houses to be built, and they wanted to see the benefit of development happening in their neighborhood. But they also were very clear that they wanted to celebrate the long-term residents, and so we started having a lot of events to help capture the vision of the neighbors and celebrate the history of the neighborhood. So we had porch parties where we would throw parties on people's front porch, and we had a street festival where we closed down the street and we asked people to envision what that street could look like redeveloped, what kind of stores they would have there, what it would look like to have people walking up and down 16th Street, which didn't happen very frequently. So going on to slide 13, one of the outcomes that they were hoping for, like I said, was to have a truly mixed income neighborhood. And King Park at the time owned about 85 lots in the neighborhood. And so we partnered with 2 for-profit companies, Redevelopment Group and David Weekley Homes, to build on those lots. And as part of the agreement, we were selling them discounted lots, and they would build us houses for low-income home buyers, so that the houses that were being built were all of the same quality. As you drive down the street, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between what was a market rate house and what was a house owned by a low-income homeowner. So our goal when we started was to have 20% of those houses set aside for low and moderate income home buyers. We just finished the last of the houses in the Monon 16 area, and we actually exceeded that goal pretty significantly. We hit 30% of the houses that were built were for low and moderate income home buyers. So going on to slide 14 then, Jim mentioned infrastructure improvements being really important. This is a before and after. We cleared out the Monon, the property on either side of the Monon. It just didn't feel safe. There were, it was very dark. When we did this, we found a bunch of buried tires underneath all that overgrowth, and we had to pay about $40,000 to have tires removed that were illegally dumped there. Going on to slide 15, we also did a lot of brownfield remediation. So this is a garage that we acquired for $40,000. We actually, this was in part of that redlined area of the focus area. And so when we did the quiet title on it, there were over 100 interested parties that had to be noticed in order for us to get quiet title on this property. And it ended up costing more to do the quiet title action than it did to buy the property. And the city supported this project with EPA funds as well. And now you can see this is the same block with, there are actually 3 houses built on the property that was this garage before. Slide 16 shows kind of more of the before and after, lots of illegal dumping in this area, lots of vacant property that hadn't been built on many times ever, but there hadn't been houses on many of these blocks for 100 years. And then slide 17, probably the most significant thing we did in this area for the neighbors, who the biggest concern they had was there was an operating brothel in the middle of this neighborhood. It had been an eyesore and a source of crime for decades, really. We acquired it through county surplus and tore the property down. That's the mayor watching as they tear the property down. Going on to slide 18 then, that's more demolition and press conference. After this brothel was torn down, crime in this neighborhood dropped by 40%. So it was hugely significant. We had a large number of police officers show up for this demo because they were so excited about this house being torn down. And then slide 19 is the duplex that we built there, which is actually a mixed income duplex. So one side's market rate and the other side is for low income. So it's mixed income in the whole neighborhood, but also mixed income even on individual parcels. Slide 20 shows some of the infrastructure improvements that we did as well. Sidewalks, alleys, lots of site clearance, cleaning out all the illegal dumping. And then slide 21, we also did a lot of other brownfield remediation. So this was a vacant gas station where the tanks were pulled out illegally. We acquired it again through county surplus, tore it down, using both city and state funding for that. And I think we also used EPA assessment money to confirm that there was no petroleum discharge in the soil or groundwater. And then 22, we actually supported a small business that built its new Indianapolis office on the site. It's an environmental firm. Nevis does a lot of work for us and did a lot of work for the city. And we financed this through a build fund. Since it didn't have environmental closure, it wasn't a bankable site. So we financed it until it got closure, and then it was refinanced out by one of our bank partners. Slide 23 kind of shows how we were able to use grant funds differently through the EDGE fund to make a mixed income neighborhood. Instead of closing the development gap on a house by using grant funds to pay construction costs, we put the grant funds into a very low income or low cost mortgage that helped close that gap for low income home buyers. And so home buyers who would otherwise qualify for a $180,000 home could actually qualify for a $225,000 house for the same payment. And so it gave low-income home buyers a lot more opportunity to decide where they wanted to live and what their house could look like. And then slide 24, and the other good thing about CDFIs is that as these loans are repaid, the money goes right back into other mortgages or small businesses, whatever loan product that they originally went out as. So we get to reuse those funds over and over again, and the success of current homeowners and small businesses turns into the success of future homeowners and small businesses. And we took, going on to slide 25 then, we took those lessons and we've applied for another lift, and we're selected for another lift neighborhood on again in the Smart Growth District, this time led by Edna Martin Christian Center with a partnership with Martindale Brightwood CDC. So we're taking a lot of those lessons learned from Monon 16 and we're applying them to the next neighborhood. And with that, I'll turn it over to my friend from Edna Martin Christian Center, Brothel.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So happy to be a part of this presentation. Thank you so much, Stephen, for segueing over to me, my name is Brothel Britt, and I do bring greetings from the heart of Martindale Brightwood. I am pleased to serve as the proud president and CEO of the Edna Martin Christian Center, which, as has been mentioned, has been a full-service community center serving the residents and larger community of Martindale Brightwood for the past 80 years. And we're very pleased to work with our community economic development partners as a community backbone and a broader collective impact strategy that is moving toward a very positive and a promising trajectory that'll afford the residents that we seek to serve all of the amenities and supports that they are deserving to gain access to enhanced quality of life. Basically, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Martindale Brightwood and how we try to approach things from an asset-based collective impact strategy, but also taking in partnership with the entities that have been mentioned earlier, but how we implement some of those strategies toward our overall community-based approach. Martindale Brightwood is specifically a community of 14,000 residents, all assets in our opinion, on the Near East side of Indianapolis. Our constituents are very active, they're very territorial, they're vocal residents. It includes businesses and agencies that work together to provide community-based solutions based largely on the input that we receive from our residents that ultimately we hope to result in thriving people and places. 93% of our residents, as you can see, are individuals of color, and of that, 83% of those individuals are African American. Some of the results that we've seen from some of the development and activity that has been mentioned previously that we can speak to as a result of some of our direct input has been the completion of a $20 million development on a 13-acre campus that resulted in 80,000 square foot of new assets that include an intergenerational space that includes early childhood education, additional community services, and the first high school in the neighborhood. This was a partnership that we created with Kip Indy Legacy and various funders toward the Leadership and Legacy campus. Again, it was based on a 13-acre brownfield. As was mentioned, if there's one of the many things that are synonymous with our community is that it's unfortunately still replete with brownfields, but we were able to secure EPA Superfund and brownfield grants to remediate a 13-acre site. Invest very heavily through local, federal, and state funds to really create an intergenerational space that was, one, consistent with the overall community quality of life plan, but really providing an amenity that enabled residents and children, seniors, and likewise to have an opportunity to learn and grow within their space. At the same time, in between time, we've also advocated for a city housing tax increment finance, really close to the site that you see there for area to be supported to support communities' affordable housing options. This is in addition to the Lift Indy plan that Stephen had talked about previously that we're very happy to play a lead role in. Some additional community results that have occurred over the last several years include the launch of a Generation Gardens program in which Edna Martin helps to coordinate food access programs, which ultimately became our broader Martindale Brightwood Food Resource Network. Martindale Brightwood is in the middle of a food desert where healthy food access has been problematic. It was that issue was exacerbated by the issues that we ran into during the pandemic. But we were very fortunate to be able to gain access to critical resources that not only helped us to ensure that healthy food access was provided to our residents, but that we were building capacity and infrastructure with our partners like the Flega-Hewat Center, which Chris had mentioned, to create growing centers and other opportunities to make sure that we're building capacity and access and connectivity through health food promotion. An extension of that was a launch of a consumer marketplace at 25th and Andrew J. Brown along that Monon area that has been mentioned earlier that does provide a direct conduit and an affordable conduit for individuals in need of healthy food access, and it gave us an opportunity to really promote healthy food opportunities. We've advocated and gained investment in more public amenities this past year for all the challenges that we've dealt with, and I'd be happy to kind of talk about some of the things that our community has suffered through both historically and most recently through the pandemic. we have started to see the investment of broader amenities. One has been the Douglas Library, one of the pictures that you see on your screen. There has been a renewed investment in one of our city's most historically significant parks, Frederick Douglass Park. We're looking at a $25 million investment in their Family Life Center that will complement the space that you had seen previously, and just affording our overall community an option for both recreation, for general community space, and amenities that the community has mentioned, has indicated was essential to their overall quality of life. We've advocated for improved public and private transportation options, as well as just infrastructure in general, and we're starting to see the result of some of that advocacy and investment. We've launched the PACE Recovery Center, an option for individuals that are re-entering society, being justice involved, or individuals that are struggling with physical and mental health challenges, as well as drug addictions, things of that nature, and providing them the necessary coaching, supports, workforce development, and other pieces as a means both to provide direct interventions, but as a direct response to some of the public safety challenges that our community continues to experience. We've also developed the 25th Street Corridor Plan with Ball State University as part of our overall community planning effort that we believe will result in significant infusion of city, corporate, and philanthropic investments, all part of our community and economic development strategy. But the 25th Street Corridor does serve as a centralized point in Martindale Brightwood that is an amenity that we believe will continue to attract and welcome individuals toward the level of diversity, the level of mutual investment that we'd like to see. But again, it's just another example of how a proud community wants to present itself as one that is an attractive option, but also a great place to live, thrive, worship, learn, etc. A little bit about how we tend to move toward overall advocacy and support toward a broader-based community plan. We have a community action structure that really does provide a good example of what we believe to be solid collective impact. It is based on some of these three tiers that include One Voice, which is our community Congress in Martindale Brightwood that represents, that is, its complexion is basically 50% residents and 50% community stakeholders, such as Edna Martin. I'm very pleased to serve on that board with residents from the 4 different neighborhoods that make up Martindale Brightwood. And that's responsible for communicating the SWOT analyses that we've worked on for the past several years. I'll kind of get into. They kind of make up some of the challenges or some of the directives that we seek to achieve through our quality of life plan. And we take from that, we use that to mobilize our stakeholders and residents to take action and nurture resident leadership. If there is one very significant asset that we seek to properly utilize, it is the unified voice of the residents and stakeholders in the neighborhood to ensure that that spirit of territorialism is also met with advocacy that speaks to the level of ownership that our residents and we seek to play in this community's broader development. And the MOVE is the action team of One Voice that is responsible for creating the strategies and implementing and executing the strategies that fulfill the quality of life goals. Again, this is where Edna Martin also plays a role, because we have been blessed as a community backbone and a community serving agency to be provided with resources to develop, implement programs and services that are consistent with that overall action plan that speaks to the dreaming and scheming that the One Voice members come up with. And again, in any proper collective impact strategy, you have to have backbone agencies that can bolster and build capacity and support the overall effort that includes all of the different stakeholders at play, and plays that role in creating an environment and an atmosphere of transparency, collective accountability, shared goals, shared mission and vision. And again, Edna Martin is really pleased to be one of those backbone agencies that speak to that effort. So getting more into the different SWOT analyses that we've identified over the past several years, we have various significant strengths that I've listed here. One is the investment in Martindale Brightwood community and economic development from all different levels. We are starting to see a very significant infusion of resources that do, with the right approach, can provide the type of diversity that our community welcomes, that can provide affordable housing along with mixed housing and other and the introduction of the amenities that I've outlined, just to ensure that benefits are afforded to the individuals that we have long sought to serve for our 80 years, but really does enhance the community in a way that gets us to long-term renewal. We have, there has been significant development in our community action infrastructure. As I mentioned, the city and some of our partners have really taken a more aggressive approach, recognizing the advocacy that we played in terms of ensuring our streets and our roads and sidewalks are capable of handling the infusion of additional residents, additional businesses, other providers that we seek to infuse to ensure that our residents gain higher access to quality of life. Like I said, all of our efforts are based on an asset-based community development strategy. We fully believe in the assets that our community currently has, starting first and foremost with our residents. We believe there's significant talent here, both from a community planning perspective, both from an employment and jobs pipeline, certainly from our youth, as long as we provide critical assets that will afford them the education pathways that they need. We believe we have the assets in place. We just want to make sure that as additional resources are infused in our community, that we align them in ways to fully make sure that those that deserve this benefit are able to take advantage. The collective impact model I've spoken about, having, again, backbone agencies working with stakeholders and residents toward a collective strategy. We believe we do that well. An immediate action plan that focuses on the next 4 years. Stephen talked about the 16th and Monon plan that they've worked so hard to do, and we've talked a little bit more about how our Lift Indy plan is the next extension of that, but there are other very significant and promising community development and affordable housing opportunities that we see on the immediate pipeline that, again, our job is to make sure that we are ensuring that our residents stay connected and we are driving additional participation in that process, as well as increased commercial development both to our north and our east. So again, the prospects for positive community development are certainly there. Our community is deserving because historically we have suffered from a lot of the different pervasive negative challenges that kind of come with our community is kind of synonymous with some of the demographics that we have, but we do believe we're on a positive trajectory. Some of the weaknesses that we do still suffer from, very frankly, are low-level educational development. We're starting to see an influx and introduction of higher quality access to educational models. Again, I mentioned that one of the projects that we worked very hard on was the creation of the neighborhoods only high school, but creating good solid pathways, whether that's high quality early childhood options, high quality K-12 options, and connection to post-secondary. Those are things that we still continue to work on. While we do still see a positive trajectory for affordable housing, there's still a low level, of affordable housing stock that we and our partners are trying to alleviate. There is still low economic mobility and opportunity. We suffer, very frankly, still from a disproportionate unemployment rate, disproportionate access to high quality jobs, which, like I said, for the last year and a half have only been exacerbated by a pandemic that has further stifled individuals' ability to access opportunities and their ability to get to higher paying jobs. So that has led to higher and disproportionate unemployment. We also are we're still challenged by a perception issue of disconnection and disinvestment. While we believe that we have the assets there, we'll have to continue to ensure that we are rebranding our neighborhood in a way that does do more to highlight all of the good things that are happening in the neighborhood, as opposed to the things that are news and that tend to be more sensational and more attractive to viewers. Opportunities that we have, like I said, we have a strong collective impact team that is engaged and aware of all of the development, the exciting development, and the trajectory that we find ourselves on. An opportunity is for us to continue to focus on building resident capacity, aligning stakeholder capacity, welcoming partners and investors and those who are very committed to empowerment of the residents that are here, positive transformation, but transformation that does not result in displacement of these individuals, of our individuals in the neighborhood. That's an opportunity that we believe we can play a significant role in playing. We have our quality of life plan does tend to focus on specific projects. We try to pare things down. There are overall quality of life strategies that we're looking at, but we thought that we could pare things down to 7 critical components that can be implemented in a short time frame that we hope to be able to help lead. And again, other opportunities include a funder support and a place-based strategy. If we demonstrate that our community is well connected, well aligned, consistently implementing the elements that they've conceived for a broader quality of life, we have started to see significant investment. Our job is to make sure that we can demonstrate that that investment can be aligned in a way that does focus on the residents and the assets that are currently in community. Some of the threats that we see, while I've talked about significant investment going on, we have started to be inundated with individuals that are seeing the prospects and the trajectory that our community is on, and outside investors are looking to leverage economic development opportunities, and ultimately, but they're not necessarily connected with the community and our overall vision. We've seen some talent relocation. Again, our talent in our community, we believe to be largely an asset, but without providing them the opportunities to grow, to give back, to really help develop the community, you know, that they will go and explore other opportunities. We've had systems of siloed community development activity. If there's one positive element of growth and collaboration that we've experienced as a result of the pandemic, it is that it required organizations to knock down silos in order to meet mutually beneficial goals if community renewal and revitalization and access to critical supports was the case. And we're hopeful, even though we're still in the middle of this crisis, that spirit of collaboration, that spirit of transparency continues to occur. And ultimately, the threat is if it does not, then we will see a delay in coordinated action and the fractioning off of individuals and organizations that will allow for those who are not aligned with our overall community quality of life strategy to come in and help and reshape this community in ways that are not beneficial to what we know the community is looking for. So as I mentioned, all of these analysis kind of spoke to a quality of life plan that we've worked on and adapted and updated for the past several years that really speak to these following elements. So we have family stability, education, inclusive growth, economic mobility, workforce development, intergenerational culture, affordable housing and inspiring environments, business ideation and launch and advancement, and information distribution. These are all areas that our residents and our stakeholders, the collective impact partners that I mentioned previously, have highlighted as areas that we can play a direct role. In greater detail, specific focus areas for our people in place goals as it relates to education. Our goals are to make sure that children meet their growth and development milestones, that our children are kindergarten ready, and that includes high quality, obviously, early childhood options, and our school age children are college and career ready. In order to do that, we have to make sure that we are creating good pipelines of high quality education opportunities. We don't necessarily, Martindale Brightwood doesn't get into the politics of the creation of schools. We don't care if they're traditional public, private, charter. We just want high quality options that are accessible to our children in the neighborhood. With regard to economic opportunity, our goal is to make sure that adults obtain and maintain high quality employment, whether that is direct in the community or whether they have access to high quality jobs. We want to make sure that they're provided the opportunities and resources to access those successfully. Increasing community businesses. While we are looking as a part of our revitalization and growth trajectory to introduce and include high quality businesses that can provide individuals living wage and high quality jobs, recognizing the fact that there's significant talent here that with the right training, with the right development and the right investment, it can be a mutually beneficial goal. And certainly we want to see if we can tap into the entrepreneurship spirit that is prominent in our community. We have created opportunities through our Community Solutions and Entrepreneurship Center, one of those 7 pillars, to provide access to experts that can provide information as it relates to business plans, funding infusions, startup costs, and even back office supports that'll help prospective entrepreneurs really see their business visions flourish. In terms of housing stability, again, some of the other partners, Stephen had mentioned this earlier, it is simply access to more affordable housing options. We certainly do, as I mentioned, welcome to all the investment and the diversity, mixed income housing, and other opportunities that maintains the look of our community, but certainly will provide the best opportunities for the individuals that are still here to gain high quality access to the amenities that we're seeing. We just need to make sure that the housing stock and those options to access those are available. A built environment where we enhance residents' access to the arts, recreation, and entertainment. There are a number of different options that we like to highlight that are specific to Martindale Brightwood. We have a very rich history in terms of arts and culture and just overall identity that we want to make sure that we are continuing to push as far as a new brand of what Martindale Brightwood can be, and increase the cleanliness and beautification of the area through placemaking. Again, some of the efforts that Stephen had talked about as far as remediating illegal dumping, having a collective strategy with our volunteers, our service providers, and other organizations to really play a more aggressive role in community cleanup, along with all of this investment, is something that we take very seriously. I had mentioned that we are a food desert, so increasing healthy food security, access to healthy food options is something that we expect to fully accelerate, not only with the food resource network that I mentioned previously, but also with the introduction of more robust healthy food options as our neighborhood does gain increased community investment, and of course the increase in community produce goods. The Flaga-Hewat Center, our food resource network, our Henry Blair Farm, some of the things that we've done to create growing centers to not only enhance that access, but also to provide a skill development opportunity for our youth and our seniors and individuals that do want to gain increased understanding of that particular trade. And finally, community leadership and connectivity, where we connect our neighbors with each other through more information sharing. We've created newsletters, we've created blogs, we've created social media. They're designed to make sure that we keep our neighbors up to speed on things that are happening that affect them, whether it is immunization clinics, which are pretty aggressively underway in our neighborhood, whether it is hearings that discuss potential housing options or investments or things that are being made that ensure the community is aware, so that these things aren't happening on the community but are happening with the community. We want to make sure that that information exchange is strong and robust, so individuals feel confident that they know what all is going on. And we've started to create that through our community voice and news network. And we also want to develop a community fellows program to cultivate Martindale Brightwood leadership. Again, one of those strong pillars for our collective impact strategy is that One Voice Congress, the Community Congress, which is primarily made up of residents that are the key decision makers that help drive and inform our overall quality of life plans. We, as the neighborhood stakeholders and collective impact backbones, have a responsibility and obligation to ensure that resources are afforded to our residents so that they can gain access to quality leadership development and skill sets to help kind of build community in a way that does take advantage of the assets that we have and utilize the resources that we have to help build that capacity in that regard. Specifically, as I mentioned, there are 7 specific goals, collective impact strategies that we are in the process of completing. Several of those have already happened and are underway. I've already mentioned them. Some are still continuing to be in the works. The 25th Street Corridor that I mentioned is a partnership that we've developed with Ball State University. Also has 23 partners and 14 Martindale Brightwood specific partners. Our education zone looks at a strategy that works with all of our area schools and our housing organizations, whether it is the Martindale Brightwood CDC or Renew Indianapolis or our Lift Indy program, to create housing opportunities focusing on a 2-generation approach that provides kids access to the schools of their parents' choosing, high quality schools, but also the access to the parent development and stabilization supports that Edna Martin helps to lead, in addition to the 40 partners that are mentioned here. The Leadership and Legacy Campus, as I mentioned previously, was the 13-acre site that we were able to fully remediate. We actually just completed final construction on that project for that full $20 million investment just last month with the introduction of space that allows for some of our business partners to the east of that facility to have parking space to help hire and secure high quality talent within our community. Edna Martin also leads our Community Solutions and Entrepreneurship Center, which, as I mentioned, provides entrepreneurs an opportunity to gain access to resources and supports that helps create business plans, help provide access to resources for startup capital, and provides back office support. The Food Resource Network, which I've also talked about earlier, is not just Edna Martin, but a collection of food access opportunities, growing centers, prospective food providers whose goal is to ensure that residents have access to high quality, healthy food. The Community Voice and News Network right now is the newsletter and the blogs and the social media that we had mentioned, but we are also in the process of utilizing the students that are in our high school that are on a social media and communications track to create opportunities for them to lead in efforts to help share and disseminate information relative to our community, to help advocate on certain positions. One of the things that the students of our high school has done for the last couple of years is to create community peace walks and community engagement sessions that speak to issues that they have highlighted as important to them. And so they were very active in terms of bringing light to various social justice issues that they found to be directly impactful, and they're taking it even further to talk about some of the community ills that they may believe are specific and germane to our community, but are quite endemic to other communities of our type. And as I mentioned, the PACE Recovery and Resource Center actually has been a very critical backbone site for a while. We work with not only for access for those individuals that are struggling with substance abuse and addictions, and individuals that are reintegrating, just as involved individuals that are reintegrating society, but providing them essential coaching, whether it is employment coaching, financial coaching, access to income supports, just to make sure that that integration, that individual renewal is met with a partner that can have a relationship and a coaching relationship for years to come. And these strategies, again, most of the 7 are either currently underway and have been finalized or on their way toward that, by consistent with our 2022 goal. Finally, the collective impact capacity building, a little more detail. As I mentioned, we're able to do this because we look at things from an asset-based approach, recognizing that as blessed as we've been to afford the community access to significant resources, significant stabilization resources, we have seen such an infusion and an influx of additional stabilization resources as that backbone since the pandemic. We recognize that we are only as strong as as the assets that we have in the community, that includes the residents and the additional partners that we seek to work with. So our collective impact team is inclusive of our agencies, and we try to keep things focused in a transparent and a coherent way on specific collective impact projects, but also keenly aware of the trajectory that we find ourselves on, and inviting partners who are willing to work with us toward a strategy that we know is rooted in what is in the best interest of our residents, because it is largely resident driven. Service and delivery and performance team, again, this is where we look at the utilization of all stakeholder assets to ensure that the resident goals are met through the introduction of high quality, accountable programs and services that do speak to their needs. The entrepreneurship and community solutions team also plays a similar role, but does focus on elements of building social and economic mobility through dreams of entrepreneurship and other asset development there. And our leadership and capacity building councils, which allow us to provide access to high quality leadership development to ensure that when we say that our efforts are asset-based and resident driven, we're providing the residents the supports and skill development that is needed to help move their community forward. One of the things that we have proposed as we start to see this infusion of investment is the introduction of a community program fund. We are worried about the impacts of increased market rate and diverse income housing options, and what that will do to the residents that are here, and ensuring that there is some stability both in the provision of rental assistance, mortgage assistance, different things like that, that'll keep the individuals here as we start to introduce all these wonderful new amenities. So providing, looking at a program fund that provides those type of investments is something that Edna Martin has tried to step in and play a significant role in. We hope to continue to utilize environmental remediation funds like the super fund that we utilize for the Leadership and Legacy Campus that'll help us continue to remediate the brownfields and other areas that that we still are struggling to ensure are taken care of.
Barato, we're going to have to move on to some questions at this point. If you can wind up, please.
Sure. Well, again, as you guys can see, we have all of these efforts and all these pieces together. We believe that our community is on a bright trajectory. So I'm happy to answer questions as we go from here.
Great, thank you. And thanks everybody for the presentations today. We're going to take some questions now. And if we don't get to your questions, and thanks everybody for submitting them, you can see the contact information for each of our speakers. We're going to have everybody turn their camera on. So we had some technical issues with Stephen's connection today, so he is not able to be on camera, but we have his photo up there so you can see him there. Okay, so we got several here. And one that came in near the end is aimed at Jim, but maybe others can also weigh in on this question. And that is there an average price for remediation of a brownfield in Indianapolis? For example, how much should a developer plan for prior to breaking ground?
There's a broad range of costs for remediation of brownfields. They can range from little, from a site where you do testing and there isn't really any contamination that needs to be cleaned up to millions of dollars. And so it really depends on the history of the use of the property and you know what happened to it afterwards. Some of them experienced illegal dumping afterwards. So I don't think I think that's the best answer to that. So.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question for Burrito based on what you were speaking for relative to the food desert there. Do you plan or have a local food market plan for the neighborhood? Is it possible? And what about employment and good food too? You need to unmute.
Yes, so the answer is yes. We are currently working with internal and external partners toward a market study to really gauge the feasibility of what type of food market opportunities that we can have that'll be sustained. Local initiative support corporations have been helping us lead that role, but one thing that we are definitely committed to is the creation, as I said, of growing centers such as our Henry Blair Farm and some of the things that our partners with Lake Hewat Center are doing that provide not only access to high quality food and growing centers, but like I said, skill development for the talent that we have in the community. So it's a multi-pronged approach. But we are still looking at the early elements of a market study to see if we're looking at a supermarket or whatever that option would be, if it could be sustainable based on where our community currently is.
Okay, thank you. Next question is aimed toward both Stephen and Barato, and that is, how do you ensure that the single-family homes developed in the area that will remain affordable? And has the city kicked in funding for property tax increases and so on?
So I'll speak to what we seek to do. Again, our connection is to provide comprehensive supports that will help alleviate some of the different costs as housing prices continue to rise, right? Whether it's access to various forms of assistance, rental, utility, and things of that nature, and our connection with Renew to ensure that products, financial products that will help alleviate and keep those costs down for families is something that we continue to work together. But from our end, we're not necessarily a developer and we don't have housing stock, but we do have access to significant resources that will provide connectors to some of those things that are very costly for individuals, whether that's high quality early childhood education or the barrier removal services that'll help, help maintain their presence in community.
Okay. Next question here is from Timothy Barzik, who asks, I guess, points out a comment first. Many of these improvements would positively impact public health, both physical and mental. Are these health benefits communicated during these approaches? And would that add value by highlighting the before and after health benefits of these things? I don't know who wants to take that on.
I'll attempt to answer this, although I think Chris may be even better positioned to answer this. We didn't really capture the health benefits. We did talk a lot about, public safety as part of the goal of our Monon 16 project, but we didn't really capture the health impacts of the work that we were doing. I think that would be certainly something that we would want to do going forward, especially in areas where we're dealing with a lot of brownfields. One of the things that we did with all of our houses that we developed was we included vapor intrusion systems in every one of the houses, just to make sure that even though we didn't think that there were issues, we wanted to make sure that they were healthy places to live. And so, I think there are a lot of ways that we can improve the metrics of how community development is impacting communities, for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. First of all, kudos for taking the VI considerations into account as you're building new construction. That's key. Just for the viewers out there, Indianapolis and Indiana, majority of Indiana is in a radon action area on the EPA's maps. So it's always good to take that into account, whether or not you're worried about solvents or other things lurking below. So it's a great thing that you've taken that step. In terms of community public health benefits of brownfield redevelopment, with the University of Louisville Center for Environmental Policy and Management, we've been working on a tool with EPA headquarters, the Brownfield Area Benefits Estimator, a long name for a project called BABE, but we have considered the health benefits of cleaning up brownfields. The part that made it difficult in our calculations and trying to insert into that effort, and then I'll get into the Smart Growth District component too, has been, I think, related to the first question. No particular brownfield is alike. They all have little subtle differences, whether it's the contaminants of concern, the RECs, the recognized environmental conditions, the type of legacy of past, or a combination platter. If you have a 7-way bean salad of a brownfield where you've got everything in one place. So there's no set cost to clean one up. There are some patterns, but when you look at that, that also means the health impacts are going to vary broadly based on that same legacy. So depending on if you get a 3-way bean salad, 7-way bean salad, brownfield, or if it's just one item, we've got some USTs hanging around, it's petroleum. You can make some generalities, but trying to predict the health benefits, it becomes more of a general assumption that if a brownfield is cleaned up and redeveloped, you're definitely going to get positive outcomes, right? Because those pathways to get approval for financing typically is the first thing that developers will have to do to work out the financing, and the banks will want to ensure they've taken the proper steps. But beyond that, if the state has been involved and they have a comfort letter or a site status letter in Indiana through IDEM, that will give you some assurance that the conditions present have been mitigated. And so as you achieve each individual brownfield site, those exposure pathways will be reduced. So yes, there's a net positive benefit. Is it easily calculable? No. So that's an interesting question, and I agree. I think it's one that I think EPA is also very interested in too.
I'm going to throw in here the man who asked the question, Tim Barzik, is speaking in a webinar later in this series about health impact assessments, and a lot of the things that are being done in this community have health benefits beyond the cleanup and removal of contaminants in terms of people's physical and mental well-being. And so opportunities for quantification of that will make for an interesting discussion in our future webinar.
Thanks, Jim.
Absolutely. And one little tidbit I didn't, and I was trying to set the stage earlier. I forgot to mention, in 2008, we did a study of illegal dumping, which itself has some impacts on folks' mental concerns with their neighborhood, and how, and also it can be contamination that has been, I've witnessed it in Martindale Brightwood, drums being dumped. But, 30% of the alleyways had illegal dumping on them, and 17% of the parcels, of the vacant parcels, so at that time. So I think there's been a huge shift over this time in that category as well. So it still occurs, but not nearly to the level of what was witnessed before. So I just wanted to make that, to shout out to all of you guys working. That is one drastic increase in betterment. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. We'll do a couple more and then wrap up here. And this question is for Stephen and the team. What communications methods did you use to connect with residents and engage them in the porch parties, street festival, and ongoing discussions?
Sure. So we as Renew work with a lot of our community-based partners that have direct relationships with residents, and so we support them, and we come alongside with them. So the porch party idea was actually one from one of our partners, Harrison Center for the Arts, and they were out in the neighborhood, going door to door, and really connecting with especially some of the older residents in the neighborhood. And then, we had a presence at neighborhood meetings. We had regular meetings with, the president of the neighborhood associations and things like that, just showing up to neighborhood meetings, going to the churches, trying to meet people wherever they were in the community. So it's an everything and kind of outreach strategy.
Yeah, if I could, I'd only add that there's tremendous strength with regard to the 4 different neighborhood organizations that make up Martindale Brightwood. In addition to the regular engagement meetings, they're connected by that community congress. So, and to Stephen's credit and others who are really trying to play a proactive role in development, they figured out the right strategies to both engage each individual neighborhood group, but maintain a presence in our town halls and our community congress activities, to make sure that they're gaining maximum exposure to the residents that we serve. Also tapping into the community organizations that are directly, like Edna Martin, that are directly serving residents.
Thank you. Here's a question finally from Jenna Ellswick, who's asking, how did Renew connect with Edge Fund and Build Fund? And how should other communities go about doing this or something similar with other CDFIs?
So we created them. They are under our umbrella. So we saw a need and just created it ourselves. But that's certainly only one strategy. There are CDFIs in most communities that serve most communities around the country. I think there are over 1,000 now. But really, I think it's about it's about making sure that you're developing products and partnerships that help achieve the outcome that you want. So, with Build Fund, we were very cognizant of the issues around financing environmentally contaminated properties. And so that was one of the areas that we focused on very intensely. And we had bank partners who knew that that's what we were trying to do, get this site to closure, and they were willing to work with us to help us, knowing that at the end of 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, whenever closure was reached, that our borrowers were going to want to refinance us out with a regular bank partner that could help them and their business grow over time as well. So, we were very intentional about what it was we were trying to do. And I think that that's really important, whether when you have options to work with different CDFIs or different banks to make sure that you have a shared understanding of what the outcome is.
Stephen. I think with that, given where we are in time, we'll wrap up for today. And thanks again to everybody who submitted questions. We'll be sharing these with the presenters today as well. You can see that you can email them via their addresses on the screen. But with this, before we wrap, I'm going to just turn the floor over to Jim to kind of summarize what we heard today and talk a little bit about what's next for this series.
So this is especially inspiring and uplifting for me. I had the opportunity to drive through this entire neighborhood many times in the early 2000s with Chris Harrell and others, looking at the community conditions and the incredible population loss and the amount of abandoned properties and burned out homes and brownfields that afflicted this neighborhood. And so seeing the result of the incredible amount of work put in by people on the screen and people in the many pictures off the screen that have put into this neighborhood, and the actual on the ground results that have occurred, because driving through this neighborhood right now shows very, very dramatic change and improvement in removal of blight, removal of brownfields, and creation of amenities and infrastructure. And so it's a very inspiring thing for me, having seen it in the before state, to go back and see what has been done here. I want to say none of this had to happen. There are other neighborhoods that, for whatever reason, are in the situation that the ball never got rolling. And so they're very much in the before picture. And so lessons taken from a story like this about what started things, and are lessons that we can take to other neighborhoods and think about what can happen. I want to say our next webinar is on October 20th, and it will focus on a neighborhood in Boston, and it is a transit-oriented development story and a fascinating one, and it's led by our EPA Boston office. And so I encourage you to listen in on that. And with that, I thank you all very much, and I thank our speakers. It was just fantastic.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
And with that, we're going to conclude our webinar today, Connecting Resources to Community-Based Planning. I'd like to offer a great big thank you to our panelists for a great presentation, to everyone who attended today, and to John Coleman, our communications and technology guru, who helps to make this all happen, especially considering a few of the technical issues we had for this one. The complete recording of today's webinar will be posted on smartgrowth.org. Also, for those of you who have requested one, all attendees will receive an email that will contain a link to a personalized certificate of participation. Please look for this follow-up email, especially if you need that to claim other credits. When you exit from today's webinar, you'll be asked to participate in a short evaluation. Please take a few moments to provide feedback so that we can continue to improve the webinar experience for you. Finally, keep an eye on smartgrowth.org and your email inbox for details on other future webinars, including a series of Walktober Walk-in-Ars that we'll be hosting in association with the Maryland Department of Transportation every Thursday morning in October. Please participate in these if you're in Maryland or would like to learn about our pedestrian safety, health, and commuting options, as well as current trends and walk programs and initiatives in the region and beyond. As we just mentioned, the next program in this EPA and Smart Growth Network series will be October 20th. More information about that session will be available soon. And with that, I wish everyone a great day.